Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Herron with Hummingbird.Tech, and today I have on with joining me on the Zoom call is Collin Walke, a counselor with Hall Estill. And to give Collin a brief introduction, he spent over 8 years in the legal field, and what seems like to be the last 4 years of that honing specifically on the data privacy focus, which was initially spurred from working with clients on regulatory HIPAA compliance. During his 6 years of public service as a state representative with the state of Oklahoma, he was a member of the Data Privacy Working Group and authored an opt-in data privacy bill out of the House. Currently, as I mentioned, he's counseling with Hall Estill, leading their cybersecurity and data privacy practice, and meeting with local organizations to provide both legal and regulatory advice and management for cyber breaches. He's a graduate magna cum laude at from Oklahoma City University School of Law. And Collin, if I've said anything out of line, jump in now.
No, it was all on point, except I have been practicing law for 15 years.
Okay.
Traditionally in business litigation and business transactions, but
Fair
yeah,
enough.
I spot on. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, Collin, I obviously wanted to bring you on here because part of what a lot of our clients are dealing with on the tech side is that concern over cybersecurity. And with you having, spent a, better part of the last number of years focusing and honing specifically in that, I thought it'd be great to have someone, that has that expertise to really kind of dive a little bit more into what some of the questions that we're facing and kind of get your feedback in terms of what it is, how they should be perceiving cybersecurity and what is it that they should be doing with that information. So with that being said, one of the first questions or one of the new iterations that we've seen is the next generation beyond an antivirus tool and using what's called an EDR tool. So when we sit across the table from prospects and clients, they always ask us the question of why do we need an EDR tool? Do you want to dive a little bit more into that?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I want to be clear about is that, cybersecurity and data privacy practices are important no matter what business you're in. In Oklahoma, we grow it, feed it, or pump it out of the ground. Data usually ain't our thing. But in all reality, even if you're an oil and gas pipeline, you can think about, for example, the pipeline that got hijacked a few years ago. This plays a role in everything. And so when clients come and ask me, well, do I need an EDR? Well, first of all, what is an EDR? It's an endpoint detection response tool.
Right.
And what this does is allows an automated system outside of your organization to monitor what's going on within your organization. And this is extremely important for a litany of reasons.
Yeah.
First of all, it's important from a preventative aspect because it allows somebody to notice what odd behavior is happening on your network before something goes south.
Absolutely.
Additionally, it helps you on the back end because it can also help to uncover and assist in remediating the types of problems that you have. Right. What type of virus, what type of hack, what type of a situation are we dealing with? This gives you that information right up front so that you can handle it both proactively and on the back end should a breach actually occur.
Absolutely. And so one of the other tools or one of the other fundamentals that we believe people need to be focusing on and looking at is structuring their data solution, but also making sure that it's backed up properly. So how would you recommend organizations handle the backup systems that they have in place?
Yeah, and when we're talking about backup systems, there are several options. You can do it on site, you can do it through a cloud provider, etc. But you are sacrificing. Each one has its pros and cons, sure. Right? So if you have something that is hardware and it's on site, etc., you have easy accessibility. It's quick. It may not have the storage capacity that you need. And then on top of that, should you have some sort of a business interruption, tornado, those sorts of things, right. Then the question is, well, do I still have my data?
Right.
And so that's the benefit of having a cloud is that you could have your facility destroyed, but at the end of the day, it's backed up somewhere else. It's not been touched.
Right.
The problem is it's in the hands of third-party providers. And if their system goes down or you need quick access to it, you may be delayed in getting access to that.
Right.
And so what I recommend to everybody is that they go through and they actually analyze and do a data map of what data they have, the categories of the data, where it goes, and how important is that data. Because the importance of the data is going to dictate whether or not you want that quickly accessible on hand, or whether or not you could risk a third party delaying your response to get that information.
Sure. And for transparency for you, our approach is we have kind of that redundancy in place. So you have that local BDR tool, backup disaster and recovery tool, as well as having something replicated to the cloud, and making sure that, we kind of have those two things in place. God forbid, worst case scenario, you can have, both be able to quick restore, as well as, if something comes through, like you said, a tornado comes through your building, you still have the data accessible. Granted, it'll take some time to get to.
And that was one of the things that we talked about offline that was kind of important in this regard, is that when you're talking with clients about how to structure their data, let me back up real quick. Can you edit this?
Yeah, you're good. I'll just putting a hand up here to remind me to edit it.
Yeah, sorry. We were just talking about
hourly incrementals.
Thank you. Yeah. Go back on. All right.
I'm good.
So we were just talking about hourly incrementals. How frequent should you back up this information and this data, right? Because if I've got as a lawyer, if I've got an old client file, I know that I don't need to back that up with any sort of routine maintenance.
Right.
But if it's something that I'm actively working on or somebody else is, I might want increments of backup less than an hour. That's also very costly, time intensive, et cetera. So you have to weigh those pros and cons about how frequent backup.
Sure. And some of the other conversations that we're having with clients and prospects isn't cybersecurity more of a concern for larger organizations, not my 10, 15, 20 person company? Why should I worry about that? Do you want to address that?
Yeah, because I think it's actually the inverse of that.
Right.
I think that the smaller the organization is, the more likely you are to be targeted. Because if I'm a hacker, I could go try and hack Walmart all day long, but I know that they have got great cybersecurity. If I'm a small mom and pop shop and I'm running credit cards or any other type of information, I know that I'm easy pickings. And this is one of the points I really try and stress to lawyers is you have financial information, you've got social security numbers, just think about your own employees, right? I mean, you've got all of their personal information.
Sure.
And so the size of the organization does matter. But I think at the end of the day, if you're the small mom and pop shop, you're more vulnerable than the bigger individuals are.
Yeah. And to use a baseball analogy, I always liken it to, that's a single and the Walmart's the home run.
That's right.
They're happy with those singles all day because they know that the organization is likely to pay $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in terms to restore their data or get what they believe to be an encryption key.
Absolutely.
And building off that iteration of organizations and having that cybersecurity concern, how do they know whether or not they should be getting perhaps penetration tested or pen tested?
So this is kind of like all of the other items that we were talking about. It really is up to the client, because if somebody were to say to me, I have unlimited resources, I want the best that I can get, well, then my response is that you need to be pen tested.
Yes.
You certainly need to be pen tested if you're dealing with health information, financial information, and by that I mean you're a bank, et cetera.
Sure.
I certainly, there are a lot of contracts as well as insurance contracts that require you to be pen tested at least annually.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, if you could do it, I recommend everybody do it, and to be clear, what pen testing is that's penetration testing. That's giving a good hacker, what we call a white hat, the opportunity to come in and try and hack your system so that you know where the vulnerabilities are. And so going back to it, if you're a small mom and pop shop and you don't know where your vulnerabilities are, somebody's going to find them for you.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And some of those vulnerabilities may be fully my staff just clicking on the wrong emails. So what would you recommend in terms of ensuring that, not with 100% insurance, but how can we better equip staff to not click on those bad emails?
The statistics vary, but at least 25% of all hacks occur as a result of human error, and typically through what you're talking about, phishing attacks, PHI. SING, not FI, like we think of in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And the reality is that there are a lot of companies. First of all, you need to have at least annual training for all of your employees. That's the first, cheapest, most cost-effective way of doing it. Have training so that they can identify spoofed emails, so they can identify spoofed links, etc. So that's the first step. But then on top of that, what I really recommend is that individuals go through practical tests. And so you could hire a company like Hummingbird to come in, and they will send out a spoofed email and see who clicks on it. If somebody clicks on it, then they need to go through additional training. And I think that that's really wise, because they're getting so good with the spoofed emails today that it's hard sometimes to figure out whether or not that's an issue. And I'll tell you another aspect of this too that's really concerning. If you are taking possession of money for somebody, like you're a real estate broker, and you get an email that says, hey, wire the money to this account.
ACH,
Far too many times people are just wiring the money to the account without picking up the phone and verifying that's the correct account. And it turns out it's been spoofed. So not just emails, but transfers, all of those things need to be analyzed.
And to speak a little bit further about Hummingbird specifically, we actually build in monthly cybersecurity training standard for our practice. So for our clients, they get training sent to them every single month, usually catered specifically to where we see gaps in their own personal analysis. And I think that that's a huge differentiator too, because you need to be able to obviously know what's a good email, what's not a good email, but also know how to work off a public Wi-Fi, or know what's safe, know how to connect to a VPN, have those kind of stressors focused in. So that way people have a little more top of mind, as opposed to, I talked about it, 11 months ago, and I think I remember 95% of it, but.
Well, and that's a great point. I'm glad that you guys provide that sort of training, because it's also important that you don't have your own in-house people only that are looking at this. Because if you do, they're going to have blinders on, and they're not going to see what other potential issues exist out there.
Absolutely. So, while ideally, the staff is trained and they have a good understanding in terms of what are safe and non-safe emails to look at, there are additional cybersecurity controls that we can put in. So we can put in email security controls that, verify IP addresses and things like that. How do I know, or how do business owners know when they have the proper cybersecurity controls in place?
I don't think there's a golden answer to that. If you have one, I would love to know it, because it's iterative. Because the reality is that threat attacks are always changing. And so as a result of that, you're never going to be 100% prepared. I mean, what we know is that most of these modified viruses, they can live on your system for months without you ever even knowing that they exist. We also know about zero-day attacks, or zero-click attacks, like Pegasus software and things like that. So cybersecurity is something that you have to be ever vigilant on. I would suggest that if you have EDR, you have proper training, you've got the firewalls, you've hired Hummingbird to do the pen testing, you're all up to speed, you've done all that you can do, but you have to remain vigilant, because this is an ever-changing world that we're living in.
An important thing that I just want to make sure that I mention is, we actually don't do the pen testing in-house. We do have partnerships with other organizations to be able to help our clients with that. Excuse me. So I guess another part of it too. So I talked a little bit about EDR being kind of the advancement off of antivirus, but I also want to talk about antivirus, because I think so many organizations, especially in Oklahoma, are content to buy the computer from, big box store here, get the standard McAfee antivirus software, and say, that's good for me, I'm ready to go. How should companies look to evaluate their antivirus software? Or, do you feel like the standard, open box McAfee antivirus solution is sufficient for what they need?
The answer to that is no, for a couple of reasons. One, tying back into what we just spoke about, this is iterative. It's constantly changing. Your McAfee, your antivirus software is only as good as the last virus that they could detect. And so as a result of that, they will not be able to protect you from new types of viruses and new types of attacks. Not only that, but you've got to remember that maybe you just have your own PC, right? And you're like, hey, I'm just using this for personal reasons or whatever. Great. Maybe then McAfee is sufficient for you. But for the moment that you use that computer for work and
Right.
you access that work,
Yeah.
it may not be sufficient. And now you have opened up the business to liability through the use of your own personal computer. You can think about your cell phone. If your cell phone is infected and it's got access to your work information,
Correct.
your antivirus software ain't on there.
Right.
So antivirus is not the end all be all by any stretch, mainly because it's looking backwards, not forwards,
Right.
which is why you need the EDR.
Right. All right. So we talked about all the different ways that you can look to try and control. I mean, and there's, like we mentioned, there's no 100%. There's multiple iterations that we can build off of this. But, you know, we put all these cybersecurity controls in place, or we hope to, and, you know, the hope is that we don't get ransomware attacked. We don't get that data breach. We don't get that email with the blue screen with the guy and, you know, the smiley face that's not so smiley when you're receiving it. How should someone look to evaluate how costly a ransomware attack may be for their organization?
This is why I tell people all day long that they need to hire good tech companies like Hummingbird.Tech to come out and evaluate them. So the average cost of a data breach worldwide, according to IBM in 2022, was $4 million. Okay, so that's just the breach aspect. When you talk about ransomware, those numbers are growing exponentially by the day. So the average cost used to be about $900,000. And the bigger concern about dealing with ransomware specifically is that they could do multiple encryption keys. So that if you have one encryption, maybe you pay them $1 million and hopefully they give you the encryption key. But now it's encrypted underneath as well. You've got to pay another $1 million to get that one unencrypted. And there's no guarantee that they're actually going to give you the key to do this, which is why it's so important that you coordinate with counsel and with tech companies during this process to find out, A, should you pay it? Are these individuals reliable? And then B, do you need to contact the FBI to determine whether or not you need to pay this?
Right.
So it gets really complex really quick, but you're looking at bankruptcy level negative financial impact if you are ransomware or hacked. That's
and I think that's telling too, because you look at the vast majority of organizations. I don't know if the number is specifically 80%, but I remember hearing something in the lines of, if you've gotten breached, 80% of companies end up failing because, like you said, there's those elements. And I think the other part of it too is, especially in the state of Oklahoma, where so many people honor the handshake, you know, have that, you know, deep relationship. When you need to kind of come to them tail in hand saying, listen, your information may or may not be compromised. I don't really know what to tell you to do about it. Let's hope that we can still do business together. That's a tough conversation to have.
That's right.
And so
you're not just talking about the financial impacts directly. You're talking about the PR and the future relationships as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So, Collin, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the insight you're able to provide. And I hope that, you know, this is telling and this is good information for both our clients and, you know, the general Oklahoma community to be able to share. Because I think that, you know, while we can talk about this and while you and I both live, breathe, and die by this every single day, I think it's important that we make it tangible as well for, you know, the general public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I hope we keep working together in the future.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thanks, Collin.
Thank you, Jim.